crime, but I don't feel that it is essentially suppressing me and you know, suppressing my ability to have a quality of life that I can bring for myself or for my family. So it's all of these things. So while we think of crime as something that might be tangential, crime could actually be a significant factor determining whether or not people stay in the region. Or do I take my skills and I go somewhere else where I can at least, you know, walk the streets at 1 a.m. and feel comfortable. You know, I can have the picket fence, which some people still look for, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I used to, in my earlier days as an economist, I used to do a kind of windscreen survey. You drive through certain parts of the country and there are no burglar bars, and you say, ah, this is paradise, because there are no burglar bars. But now burglar bars are all over. You know, they're now signals, you know, of where we are in terms of dealing with crime, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but throughout the region. That's one of the things I suspect as well that will be addressed, you know, coming out of the meetings, because crime is impacting on all of our economies. And when you think of the tourism-dependent countries as well, it is something that we have to get under control, because no tourist is going to want to come to an island where they know that crime is a serious concern. So lots of things to talk about in terms of our Caribbean people.
Talk about having lots of things to talk about. I'm just getting word that the leaders expect to wrap up in half an hour.
Okay, all right.
I did tell you that they...
Yes, you did warn me that, you know, there may be some...
delays.
Extended
discussion.
Extended discussion.
Yes.
Yes.
As I listened to you, though, and we talked about the brain drain, I couldn't help but recognize that the people who leave the Caribbean are the heart of the largest volume of remittances in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I recently did, you know, my job. You know, we were talking about one of the courses that I teach. I was actually sharing some information with the class on our diaspora, and we have Caribbean diaspora in Australia. So we think of the regular ones. So we think about the United States, we think about Canada, we think about England, et cetera, et cetera. But then you have persons in the diaspora in Australia. I think I saw that. And recently I came to meet some persons in the diaspora in China as well. And when these persons go out there, one of the things that you know, the class was suggesting is that there is an opportunity for Caribbean persons in the diaspora to influence decisions that impact on Caribbeans. So think about a Caribbean person ascending to the Congress in the United States and having the opportunity to speak to Caribbean issues. So there are benefits to be derived separate and apart from the remittances, but in terms also, think of, you know, certainly I can speak for Trinidad and Tobago food, and I think I might have seen some chefettes advertised
it was a marketing campaign.
It was a marketing campaign in New York, right?
Yes.
So there are opportunities for us to expand local business. Think about beer coming out of the Caribbean. You see them, and you see it in New York, you see it in the United Kingdom, etc. So there are those business opportunities as well. So it's not all bad when we have migration, but I think we certainly have to find ways to ensure that we also get the benefit of having trained a cadre of persons as opposed to simply exporting. And while the exportation of our certified skilled workers is a credit to the region, meaning that we have trained persons who can compete on a global market, we also want to get some of the benefit to help the region develop and to help the region advance.
We're at a good point now that you've made that point. For me to say again that this transmission, or this program, or however you want to call it, that we're producing here is available and is being carried on Freedom 106.5 here in Trinidad, and of course relayed by the number of stations that fall under the Caribbean Media Corporation. So those are television and radio stations, not just in the Caribbean, but in the
diaspora as
in
well.
the diaspora as well.
There you go.
There we go.
There you go.
Right. The Government Information Services are there. CBX, which is the Caribbean Business Exchange, channel operated by the Jamaica Stock Exchange, and much more. As it happens, I just got word that there are listeners lined up.
Woo!
on Freedom 106.5.
Woo!
And they want to talk to you.
Excellent. So let's have it.
Yes, yes.
Once it's not hard questions. The hard questions are for our leaders down at the Hyatt.
So let me share the number. It's 623-5227. That's 623-5227. But I'm sure many of you know the number already since Freedom has been on the air. But let me repeat that for those of you who need it. 623-5227. We'll be happy to hear from you. I would suggest that if you're making a comment, you make it tight. If you're asking a question, make it tight, because we don't
even tighter.
Even tighter, even tighter. So let me know that you're on the line, and we'll bring you in. We talked about the presence of special guests, and in fact, the big special guest from our point of view in this bridge to Africa is certainly with the president of Rwanda, Mr. Paul Mugabe. I saw him going down the corridor with ton load of security.
I would imagine.
Yeah. I
but,
promise.
But what do you think, can you share with us, because I wasn't, I didn't have the advantage you had today. Can you share with us what you think is on the agenda for discussion?
What I get a sense of, Rwanda has emerged as like a poster country for development, transformation, and they have the highest level of technological transformation. Where, for instance, we are only just now coming to terms with using our phones for paying for stuff, etc. They have a huge agricultural community, and they've used the phones as their payment system and so on. So they've got a very smart technology minister who I had a chance to interview about a year and a half ago, and they are really leaders in this area. They've created a Silicon Valley, for instance, in Rwanda. And when you consider where they come from, in the wake of the genocide,
yes, precisely,
they've really done some outstanding things.
Well, that is some welcome news, both from the point of view of technology, because I keep saying that our Gen Zs and our Gen Alphas, they are wired differently. So they come out of the womb almost tech savvy. So the world as we know it now, they are going to want to interrogate, and they're going to want to have more technology at their fingertips. But of course, I was also very excited to hear you talk about the agriculture in Rwanda, because as you know, Caricom's, one of their, on the wish list is 25 by 25 to reduce our regional food import bill by 25% by the year 2025, which is kind of like next week. And any support that we can get in terms of how we advance that conversation. I know at UWI, our flagship tertiary institution, the only faculty of food and agriculture that we have in the region, I know there's a lot of work there, but I know we need additional support to actually get the traction in the different countries. And the 25 by 25 is being, of course, anchored and championed by President Ali out of Guyana, but it is going to redound to the benefit of all of us in the region, because we simply can no longer afford. And if one of the lessons that we got out of COVID-19 is that we really are too vulnerable to what is happening in the rest of the world, and we need to mind our business, so to speak, and the agriculture sector is one of those areas where we have to mind our business.
I'm surprised you didn't say and drink water.
That too. That too.
Yeah, the leaders certainly heard from our friend Ali today. That was on the agenda. And again, we go back to the history of this whole matter of food security or food sufficiency. And I remember in the Guyana situation where President Forbes Burnham said, look, import substitution, right? We need to stop importing flour, sweet potatoes, Irish potatoes, etc., sardines, and so on. And it generated a manufacturing drive within Guyana that where the restrictions started and people were objecting, and then they realized, well, hold on, we can make plantain chips.
You look at, there is an industry that has grown in the region, plantain chips. Well, every kind of chip, plantain, eddos, sweet potato, cassava, etc., etc. And you now have different brands, different levels of sophistication in terms of the production of these things. But I have to say, Julian, that we are part of our own demise, because we had money and we had the resources to pay for imported food. We tend to look to the outside world to feed ourselves. The days when President Burnham would have been advocating the import substitution was when resources were slim in Guyana, certainly, and then in some of the other countries. So we don't want to go back to the days where we ban the ban the importation of certain kinds of food, but certainly we have to take stock of where we are now and recognize that it is not sustainable simply because we no longer have the financial resources to allow us to import. But we also want to pay greater attention to food and nutrition security as well. We want to ensure that we raise a healthy society. In fact, we committed to doing that under the Sustainable Development Goals. Right. So we have to really mind our business and try to identify ways. It's not going to be easy because we raised generations of persons who think that a tropical snacks and a tropical fruit is something that some of us only used to see at Christmas time. But we have to find a way to essentially turn that conversation around and look inward. Something like the dragon fruit, which is it that you're getting a call or
no?
Okay. Something like the dragon fruit, which for many years was seen in foreign supermarkets. We now have a thriving dragon fruit, small market, niche market in Trinidad and Tobago. And, whenever I have the opportunity, I say that it's one of those fruits that is really high in antioxidants, really good for you. A little pricey, but, encourage people to understand the benefit of these locally produced goods. And
okay, you were right. I have a call.
Ah, there we go.
So good evening and welcome to our special Caricom focus, celebration of the 50th anniversary of the signing of the treaty and the 45th meeting of the Conference of Heads. You're listening to Freedom 106.5, where welcome you, welcome you, welcome you. Good evening. Hello? So hold on a minute. I'm at a disadvantage. I'm not hearing here on the studio floor. So let's see if we can fix that. And you can then proceed with your question or comment. Just Caricom 50 it is. I'm Julian Rogers, and I've got a sidekick here of Marlene Atz. And we'll be very happy to hear from you if we can just fix what the challenge is technically here for us. So we talk about food, we talk about that food security. What I think that people need to understand now in dealing with the food security, that everybody has a particular role. Mm-hmm. So Guyana is taken on because of Irfan Ali's responsibility, etc.
For agriculture, yeah.
For agriculture. And he's got a lot of land. Mm-hmm. And he says, come.
That's right.
So now there's room for the entrepreneurs, the business sector to get involved.
Set up agro-processing plants, et cetera, that can serve the needs not just of Guyana, but of the region as well, and use this as an opportunity to breathe additional life into the common market part of the Caricom. It's Caribbean common market, so use this opportunity to breathe additional life. And I'm glad that notwithstanding, the oil and gas boost that is taking place in Guyana, that President Ali has in fact focused on the agriculture sector, because I think it is absolutely important for us to keep our eyes on the prize. And that was one of the things that our Caribbean scholars, Arthur Lewis, he spoke about. He said, let us have, the vibrant resource sector, but also keep our eyes on things like agriculture and manufacturing to ensure that we do not, get too dependent on the resources, the natural resource endowment that we have, but that we also build complementary sectors to ensure that our economies keep growing.
I was struck by something as well in one of the conversations I had with somebody about this food security, and stressing that our target really is, first of all, to feed ourselves, rather than thinking that we are going to be able to compete with the rest of the world with exports of food.
No. I think the target really is to focus on self-sufficiency and ensuring that we have food and nutrition security. I don't want us to lose sight of that, because you also want to build a healthy society. You also want to manage some of those metrics in terms of ensuring that your newborn babies are, at the appropriate weight, et cetera, that your morbidity rates are manageable, that, you deal with things like your non-communicable diseases, et cetera. The healthy lifestyles, deal with things like obesity. So in the United Kingdom now, you're hearing conversations around banning soft drinks like in school lunches, etc. So, you want to nip those things in the bud before they really get out of control and have an economic impact on your economy. Because when you have an unhealthy society, it means that your labor force is affected. It means that the revenues that you can earn might be affected, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to nip those things in the bud, and you want to create a culture of a healthy society. So it's food security, but also nutrition security as well.
I'm glad you're reinforcing again and again the matter of nutrition, because a colleague of mine in Barbados, in a discussion about the matter of food security, says you have to tie that to a healthy
That's
Caribbean.
right. My colleagues in the Faculty of Food and Agriculture would be extremely disappointed if I did not stress the nutritional side of it as well. So I'm ensuring that I do my homework and my due diligence and stressing the nutritional part of it as well.
And I deliberately use the words healthy Caribbean.
Yes, that's right.
Because there is a grouping of experts and partners within the Caribbean community who are driving that agenda.
Yes, healthy Caribbean, that's right.
Okay. I think we fixed our connection to our listeners. So let me try one more time to invite a listener in from Freedom 106.5 here in Port of Spain, Trinidad. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Julian and Maureen. Thanks for having me. Are you hearing me?
Yes,
we're hearing
loud
you
and clear.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. The issue on the food importation bill, that's really interesting, because I remember some time ago the Supermarket Association, they said that we totally cannot wipe out importing to kind of reduce the bill, but we always speak about buying local, food security, but there seems to be no change. Even with the whole Caricom, there still seems to be an issue in settling whether or not we can grow basic products like potato, carrots, corn. We are still importing these things. So how can we bridge that gap between importing those items and also making sure that our farmers are equipped that they can produce those items here, so that way we can reduce the bill? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marlene.
Excellent question. Couple of years ago, I was involved, well, more than a couple, involved in a project to visit micro entrepreneurs in different IDB countries. This was an IDB project, and I went to St. Vincent, and I was absolutely flabbergasted that they were growing carrots in St. Vincent, because I didn't realize that this was something, okay, so pardon my ignorance. And they were beautiful carrots. And then I understood that, yes, carrots can in fact be grown. But I think we need to understand the volume at which we consume some of these goods. Not all of them can in fact be grown throughout the region. So there will be some
insufficient quantities.
There will still be some small quantities being imported. And I think the catch is, as we transition, so think of it as a pendulum, we're moving away from almost 100% dependence on imported goods and services, and we're gradually moving the pendulum. It will probably never get to 100% locally grown, but you want to shift the pendulum, and in shifting that pendulum, you're also trying to reduce your use of already scarce foreign exchange. So yes, the potatoes, I've bought potatoes grown locally, so-called English potatoes. I've actually bought some of them grown by some Trini potatoes. So I bought some Trini potatoes. Then there's the sweet potato, of course, some carrots that have been grown locally. So some farmers, particularly in the farmers markets and stuff, you will see them doing that. Kale, which up until about 10 years ago was a novel item, you now see that is everywhere. Everyone is growing kale, and happily lots of people are actually consuming kale as well. So people have recognized the need for us, and our farmers are capitalizing on the need for us to grow some of these products locally to feed the local market. So even, you know, you sell them as, you package them as organic or whatever the case might be, but you are in fact creating some dent in that food import bill. It's not sufficient for us to feel it at the macro level, but I think that there is some encouragement, and the farmers market, certainly in Trinidad and Tobago, and I suspect that there are certain kinds of similar kinds of markets throughout the region, they encourage the farmers to grow those things and to bring them to market as well. I know Jamaica has a thriving agriculture sector where they grow all of these beautiful produce. I mean, it's one of the things that I like when you go to Jamaica, and I think it's in Manchester. Yes. You go and you see all of the, the rolling, the rolling hills, the undulating hills, that you learned about, and certainly in primary school, the concept of an undulating hill. You actually see it in Jamaica. So there are some moves, even with things like coffee. Now, coffee is not a mainstay item, but the fact that we can grow coffee in different countries, you have some in Trinidad and Jamaica and some of the other islands as well. So there are moves afoot I can see as someone who goes to the market.
But I think in some ways she suggests a timetabling.
Yes, but the timetabling, I think, is a little tricky, because you have to get the tastes of the Caribbean people to adjust. Remember, we were talking before about the fact that there's some generations that have grown up on completely imported food. So for them to make that shift will take some time, and it has to be done incrementally. So when in Trinidad and Tobago we were experiencing extremely high prices and price increases of things like flour, moves were afoot by the relevant authorities to introduce cassava flour and alternative sweet potato flour, breadfruit flour alternatives, etc. But that will require a change in the taste and the taste buds, and people will have to get used to that. So in tandem with the time frame for how do we swing the pendulum in terms of locally produced food vis-a-vis international food and that foreign exchange conversation, will also have to be a timetable in terms of how do we get people to shift their taste buds so that they get more in tune with things that are local.
Fair enough. Okay, let me just remind you here why we're here and what's keeping us engaged, so to speak. The final day of the 45th Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community. We're in the final stages, really. We've been advised that the press conference to be held by the leaders is coming up. We got a half-hour call a while ago, about 15 minutes ago or so. We're taking your phone calls on Freedom 106.5. We're happy to have you come in and pose a question or make a quick comment. So that's 623-5227. I'm Julian Rogers with Marlene Atz, and we just want to say thank you for joining us, and our thanks to our friends at the Massey Group.
Today, we at the Massey Group are filled with pride and admiration as we celebrate Caricom's 50th anniversary. It is an honor to salute this remarkable milestone and reflect on the profound impact that regional integration movement has had on our Caribbean community. Caricom, founded on the principles of unity, collaboration, and progress, has been instrumental in fostering cooperation among our nations. It has provided a platform for dialogue, exchange, and joint initiatives that have shaped the destiny of our region. As we commemorate Caricom's 50th anniversary, we pay tribute to the visionaries and the leaders who championed this cause, paving the way for the Caribbean's growth and development. At the Massey Group, we recognize that our success is intrinsically linked to the vibrancy and resilience of the Caribbean community.
And welcome back. That was a message from the president of the Massey Group, and we thank them for showing support to the region and essentially throwing the weight of their group behind this 50th celebration that we're hosting here through Caribbean Bridges. So one of the interviews that Julian did with former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson was on the question of the Caribbean Court of Justice. So we'd like to hear what former Prime Minister Patterson had to say about the CCG. Have a listen.
And dealing with the Caribbean Court of Justice, since my speech in Georgetown, a number of countries have now acceded to the CCJ as the final court of appeal, the most recent one being St. Lucia. And I am hoping that the time will come when Jamaica also takes the obvious and compelling decision to have a final court of our own, which is the CCJ. I think it's somewhat of a, I would almost say a tragic irony that Trinidad and Tobago, where the court is headquartered, still has not taken that decision. And I say without apology or equivocation that had we known at the time that Trinidad and Tobago would not have accepted the CCJ as its final court of appeal, it would not have gotten the headquarters.
Prime Minister Patterson lamenting, and we're taking that licks from him in terms of Trinidad and Tobago not having accepted the CCJ as our final court of appeal. But as Julian and I were discussing throughout the evening, it's a work in progress, and we recognize that there's still some tweaking to be done in various aspects of how we breathe life into the Caricom community, and we're here for it so that we know in the next 50 years, certainly in the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years, we will see different measures and different kinds of progress being made to the benefit of all of us as citizens of the Caribbean. So we always want to thank Prime Minister Patterson for his candor. He has, I mean, as someone who has been sitting in the hot seat for many, many years, he didn't, as we say in Trinidad, he didn't hold back what, he didn't hold back, boy.
Don't spit in his mouth. That's what it is.
And, you know, and you appreciate that. You know, let's call it out for what it is. Here we are celebrating 50 years, and, you know, throughout those 5 decades, we've been incrementally trying to make some changes. And it seems as if sometimes it's a bit of a hit and miss. We make some progress, but some of the big ticket items, we've not really quite, you know, been able to succeed in those areas.
I've been thinking about this, you know, Marlene. I'm wondering if, in terms of going to independence, our constitutions and the provisions that we eventually arrived at may have hampered us. Were we in a hurry to get independence, and therefore we didn't take a kind of look that we should have, or we took it for granted that the British got it right, so therefore, but they don't have a constitution. So we end up putting in place, for instance, a referendum to help us decide whether we should leave the Privy Council or not. I mean, really.
You know, as you're reflecting there and you're talking about, you know, our quest for independence, et cetera, the plantation economy model by people like Carrie Levitt and Lloyd Best, you know, speaks to that, you know, and they're sitting other Caribbean scholars, Caribbean economic historians who would have spoken about the issues over the years, that perhaps coming out of independence, all of us British colonies, coming out of that coming out of that colonial arrangement and becoming independent, our primary focus was on gaining independence and hoisting the flags But then that programming that would have been required in 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, 60 years post-independence, some of that programming may not have been done, you know, in the way, you know, with the kinds of rigor that would have been required to see us to where we are. But, you know, in the general scheme of things, we still are fairly young. In the general scheme of things, we still are fairly young as nations, as independent countries.
The part of my question. Were we in a hurry?
Maybe we were so determined, our focus was to get out of the colonial arrangements that, yes, maybe we were in a bit of a hurry.
Because the national hero of Barbados, Earl Barrow, says, you know, we're not going to linger on the doorsteps of the colonial office, you know.
Yeah.
We go in.
Yeah, well, and here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are. Let me just remind you that we are waiting word that the leaders are concluding their session at the Hyatt Regency, and when we get that, we'll join them for what should be a very interesting round of a press conference. I'm sure, I'm just trying to guess who would be at the podium.
Speak, yes.
I don't know. I have a funny feeling that I thought that maybe U.S. Secretary of State Blinken might be joining the leaders, and then I saw all the security. You can't drive into the Hyatt.
I would imagine. Right,
because there are 99 cars in the convoy. All right. So I'm sure that they'll get him out of there as soon as possible and not join the leaders. But he could, you know.
Well, it will be interesting. Only time will tell.
He could, yeah.
Only time will tell who will actually speak.
Yeah.
And depending on who's speaking, we know that we either need to sort of, you know, buckle down for
right. for
the
ride. For the ride. Oh, no. I can tell the public of the world and that it is not Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, right? So we're all right. We shouldn't be here for a long time. He's famous for lecturing.
For giving speeches a length, he can compete with the late Fidel Castro.
Yes.
Fidel Castro was notorious.
Right. Yeah. And he did admire Fidel.
That's right.
Okay. All right.
I think we have some special.
Yeah, we got a connection where we said that we take phone calls from people, and we're fortunate to have Dr. Yao Ramasar, because one of the areas clearly, I know Joanne and Ardeen spoke about, Ardeen Serju spoke about it last night, is that we've talked a lot about the value of the creative industries, but we haven't quite done what we should have done over the period of time. So I'm very happy to have Dr. Ramasar come join us. Good evening, sir. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So we've talked a lot about this. I know there's I want to frame this right. We've talked, yes, and there's been a lot of work done. Certainly people like yourself have been driving this. We've had things like the TT Film Company.
That's right, yeah.
Barbados has done a number of things. Jamaica has done another, and we've done trained a lot of people, etc. And we have a clear demonstration of a high level of creativity that is clearly world class. But what is wrong? What is missing? What needs to be done?
What gaps need to be
What gaps
closed?
need to be filled? Is almost like how we're dealing with food security, right?
Well, first of all, the cultural industry sector, I think there would need to be a much greater buy-in to that and commitment too, because we're dealing with the economy of the future. That's now, actually. And we tended to get to very traditional sectors. In Trinidad and Tobago, for instance, they hope and pray for oil and gas prices to spike, you know, and there needs to be much more focus and commitment to the growth of that sector. And the belief is the most important thing, because we still culturally haven't got over the feeling that culture and cultural industries even something to make money. We think
Sorry, Dr. Ramasar. I have to break you here because we just got word that the leaders are literally assembling for the press conference. We're going to come back to you if you'll be patient with us. But right now, we want to We want to show you the activity at the Hyatt in the Port of Spain room and give you a sense of of how soon it is. So here we go.
Everyone who has expressed their interest, their commitment to providing tangible support on the ground in Haiti towards a resolution of the crisis currently confronting our brothers and sisters in Haiti. So we look forward to collaborating with Rwanda, who has offered to also engage the African Union on Haiti so that we can get a broad-based coalition of support on the African continent where Haiti is concerned. We have also met with the Secretary of State of the United States government and also the leader of the minority within the Congress of the United States, Congressman Jeffrey, along with several other of his colleagues, and that we had some very, very extensive engagement with the United States on issues relating to Haiti. To regards to Haiti, climate financing, the impact of climate change on our region, security, especially with regards to the influx of guns and ammunition coming from the United States into Caribbean countries, creating havoc with respect to crime and violence, and urging the United States to take more concrete actions with regards to stemming the flow of these guns and ammunition into our country. They have taken certain actions, especially with the creation of a special office to deal with the prosecution and investigation of reports of such. But we still believe that there are additional things that the U.S. can do and should do to stem the flow of guns within our region. We also raised the issue, discussed the issue with regards to correspondent banking. This issue we raised also with the congresspeople. The issue of blacklisting our countries and the challenges and the problems this can create on our ability to trade. The number of countries where we have seen the literal departure of banks because of the issue of de-risking and the fear of losing correspondent banking. There's some banks that have in fact lost the correspondent banking and they're very, very reduced to a village bank, not being able to transact with the rest of the world. And one can appreciate the impact on the everyday person in our region. Of course, we raised the issue of the embargo against Cuba, the sanctions against Cuba, and we reiterated our call to the United States to have this blockade against Cuba lifted. And also, we urged the United States to remove the sanctions on Venezuela because the far-reaching implications of the sanctions on Venezuela, and we're very much strident in respect to these issues. We also had interaction with the Prime Minister of South Korea. South Korea is a long-standing partner of the Caribbean community over several decades. And the visit was well received. There were a number of areas of proposed collaboration and cooperation and assistance. The South Korean Prime Minister indicated that this country will increase fivefold its annual contribution to the Secretariat, and we welcome this area of support. But they use opportunities as well for training for young people, utilizing greater technology in agriculture and agriculture expansion in the region. So there are a number of things that we will follow the program on, so we can further collaborate. We also had interaction with the president of COP28. COP28 will be held in the United Arab Emirates, more specifically in Dubai, with Sultan, who is the Sultan that they really no talking and no promises, that we have to come out of this opportunity with concrete action, concrete decisions. This idea of every time we go to a engagement, something new comes up, some new proposal in the table, and we tend to forget. That is to say, the developers tend to forget, or pretend that they forget, that they made the promises to us some 15 years ago, none of which have been manifested. Then we met in 2015 in Paris. There was signatures to an agreement to record, but nothing concrete has come out of this Paris Accord. So this issue of climate change and its impact on us is really too crucial for us not to get people to understand that they must not only talk and have fancy speeches and profound speeches and thoughts, but we have to translate those into concrete actions. And if promises are made, those promises must be kept. And we must allow the developer to move from this $100 billion a year. We've got 28 coming up. There has been discussion about, well, very soon there will be $100 billion in the account. You know, almost to classify us, and so that we do not go in a strident manner at opportunity. But we liken the issue of climate crisis to an injustice, and we must not relent in our fight and ensuring that we continue to represent the interests of not only the Caribbean region, but all countries that are impacted by the climate crisis. We met with and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who is a dear friend of the Caribbean community. His mere presence at our conference as a special guest is testament to his commitment and his profound and sincere interest in advancing some of the issues confronting us here in the Caribbean. And we spent an hour and a half in discussions with him after the opening ceremony, and the entire hour and a half was on Haiti. Haiti was so crucial at this conference. It occupied a serious chunk of our engagement as we seek to find a solution to the situation confronting our brothers and sisters in Haiti. We had and we do, and we still have the presence of our UK cabinet minister, Minister David Brockley, who addressed us and brought greetings to us from the government of the United Kingdom, a strong partner and a strong advocate on the issue of climate change and ensuring that their colleagues in that group of nations can really fulfill their commitments to us. And we thank the UK government for the strident support and engagement. We had also a special presentation from the Vice Minister of China at the time of the tributes, and we thank them for the partnership and collaboration as well. We have made it very clear in our discussions and in our decision with regards to the accession of Martinique and Curacao to Caricom. And we have mandated that all of the outstanding negotiations with the agreement should be completed before the end of August. So by September, we can have that decision ratified and have Martinique as a special ceremony in Guyana, when we go to travel Guyana in February, so that we can have a formal ceremony welcoming Martinique and Curacao to this body. We recognize the associate members and the expression to be more involved in the Caribbean community, and this is something that we wish to encourage and to certainly provide support to the associate members in the move to become more involved and engaged within the Caribbean community. Because the reality is, this is one Caribbean, and we should not be in a situation where we're skipping dots. You know, we have to collect all the dots, and the intention is to collect all the dots and shows that Caricom is a voice of reason. Caricom is a voice that attracts the attention of the world because once we're united, I think we can address a number of issues. On the issue of free movement, we deliberated on this matter. We have taken a decision to seek to have the free movement of all categories of people to Englewood. Obviously, there are some legal issues that we have to examine, and we are giving the legal people some months to examine those legal issues and to ensure that we can come to us by 30th of March to take a definitive position on this. And so we understand that there will be some challenges for some, but we are committed to this. In addition to the free movement, there is certain contingent rights that will be associated with the free movement of people. Access to primary health and emergency health, access to basic education, pre-primary, primary, and secondary education. Of course, we have the social security agreement in place already that people can benefit from. But we believe this is a fundamental part of the integration architecture. And at 50, we could not leave children together and not speak about the core of the integration movement, that is people's ability to move freely within the Caribbean community. And I think we would have served and have served the community well at this meeting by arriving at that decision. And we hope that to see that it will be implemented by the 30th of March 2024. So this is great news. I think I believe with all the issues that we have discussed and the number of decisions we've taken, this is the decision that we've taken at this conference. And I believe the founding fathers are smiling from heaven that the present generation of leaders were bold enough to arrive at a decision moving forward. We have also taken the decision to hold a retreat in Jamaica, okay? August 18 and 19. I have been clear to all of us that these suits and ties and we'll all stay home. That we will be in t-shirts and jeans and shorts, possibly. Focusing on some critical and core issues of the community, so that when we get to Guyana, before we get to Guyana, we can put a number of issues in place and clarity to discussions. I'm hoping that that can become a regular feature, because when you are less stiff with all of this clothes on, then you might think a little better. And I think and being in the fresh mountain breeze of Dominica, where your nostrils are cleared and your mind is cleared and all the stress away, then you'll be in a better way to think and to arrive at some decisions. So we look forward to this. We'll be reviewing the governance issues within Caricom and other areas, including functional cooperation. We certainly have to enhance functional cooperation among our nations. These are the things which matter to the average person on the streets in the Caribbean community, that they can see tangible benefits in all of these fancy decisions and all of these documents, but how do we make life better for people? And we spoke about hassle-free travel. When you get to a point, you don't have to be harassed. We have to feel, the ease of moving from one country to the other within the Caribbean community, and so this is very important. Finally, on cricket, cricket. I still believe that we have to rally around the West Indies. We'll be hosting the West Indies and India next week in Dominica. And certainly I'm urging all my citizens and residents to come out and to support West Indies cricket. Our comments about West Indies cricket comes out of because of our passion, our commitment for the game. And the reality is we do not want to lose, and we do not like to lose. And when we lose, we get vexed. You know, not because we have any personal issue with anybody, but we need there to appear to be a fighting spirit. You know, we take it personal. And so the comments of the great Prime Minister here of Trinidad and Tobago on his Facebook page is out of his passion and as a West Indian, and ensuring that he should be shouting in excitement and not kicking his toe against the wall in frustration by this. By Chairman decree, I have appointed him as the new chairman of the subcommittee, Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on Cricket. We have agreed with the president of the West Indies Cricket Board, or West Indies Cricket, to meet sometime next week, where we shall meet to discuss West Indies cricket and how we can work together. To better position our cricket in the Caribbean, in the West Indies, so that we can come back to the glorious days that we're all known for across the world. And I see our UK friends are smiling because they're winning these days, you know. I mean, back in these days, we'll bowl these guys for 46 runs, you know. So, and we'll come back to those days, Minister Otley and so on, to be able to bowl England for 46, while we would have scored 460. The issue of food and nutrition security, I want to place on public record our profound gratitude and thanks and acknowledgement to the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana for his leadership, for his diligence on the issue of food and nutrition security. We're making great strides. The reports coming out from our respective countries. There's a heightened interest on the part of farmers, investments in agriculture. If our move to reducing our import bill by 25% by 2025. And so there are some concrete plans. We're mobilizing the resources, both financial and technical. There are agreements being signed between and among ourselves. There's sharing of knowledge, there's sharing of expertise, there's sharing of resources. It is truly a united front in seeking to improve and increase the production and the quality of agricultural produce within the Caribbean community. But at the end of the day, we have to eat what we produce. So the power really is not in the hands of the government. The power of reducing the food import bill is in the hands of the people, the consumers of the Caribbean. The supermarkets will sell what we buy. Okay? You understand? For the ladies, we can see that with regards to the eyelashes, we see the major importation of eyelashes in the Caribbean because we're buying it. And I think if we can buy the agricultural produce, you know, and demand the agricultural produce, then the supermarkets and the restaurants will sell to you what you want to buy. You know, and all of the acrylic nails and so forth, let us, when you go to supermarkets, demand the items from Guyana, demand the items from Trinidad and Tobago, demand the items from Barbados, from St. Lucia, and we will see how quickly we can reduce the food import bill in the Caribbean. I will stop here to receive any questions. All difficult questions you ask to the rest of my colleagues. The easier ones you ask to me, please. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
But I also want to say, you know, we have a wonderful group of leaders working together. And the spirit of camaraderie, the willingness to give and to take. And I think the region is a very good time now to be able to capitalize on the number of actions that we need to take. And I believe coming out of Dominica, you will see even a renewed sense of vigor and determination and commitment to working together and ensuring that the governance issues and the functional cooperation matters are dealt with and so forth. So I am very impressed. I've been around for some time, but this meeting was really a wonderful one, and I want to commend all my colleagues, both the full members and the associate members, for the commitment. They worked very hard, and certainly in these 6 months, they'll be working very, very hard. So, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Just to indicate that when you wish to ask your questions, could you please indicate your name and the agency that you represent. We have a full table of leaders, including the President of Suriname, His Excellency the President of Suriname, the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, His Excellency the President of Guyana, the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, the Prime Minister of Barbados, and the Secretary General. So, as I indicated, when you wish. And, of course, our host and the chairman. So that when you, as I said before, when you wish to ask a question, please raise your hand and indicate your name and the agency you represent. Aaron?
Thank you, Leonard. Good evening, distinguished leaders. Prime Minister...
And you are?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Oren Gordon, freelance broadcaster and journalist. Prime Minister Skerrit, you said that you expect some concrete movement on free movement of skills by the early part of next year. Could you fill us in, please, on the specifics of what it is that you hope to put in place? At present, there are a limited number of categories of people allowed to move and work freely throughout the Caribbean. What is it that you're proposing? Are you thinking of going big and throwing it open totally? The second part of my question, you said there were some legal challenges to overcome, but weren't those legal challenges apparent 25, 30 years ago? What's new now? And my last question to any one of the leaders, Caricom is 50, and could you, for the benefit of the Caribbean public, help us to evaluate how effective to, in effect, grade Caricom over the last 50 years on the big headline issues: free movement of skills, free movement in terms of travel, and all the other big headline issues. I understand it's a broad sweep, but 50 is a great time to reflect in such a manner.
Prime Minister Barbados, you'll take the first part.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Broad sweep might be, in cricketing terms, a swipe, but I don't go swiping outside the off stump lest you get caught. Suffice it to say that the heads have agreed that we are now moving beyond just the freedom of movement of skills to freedom of movement of people. Out of an abundance of caution and to be sure-footed, there are some aspects of the treaty that will require amendment, and therefore we are giving ourselves between now and the 30th of March 2024 to make the amendments, because we recognize as well that there may have to be an approach that does not put countries or make countries liable to any form of suit with respect to some of the rights. So there has to be a minimum set of rights guaranteed for the movement of citizens. That will be discussed and agreed upon. That will be captured in the amendments to the treaty. That will also have to be financed, and we're looking at the Caricom Development Fund as being able to put in place the mechanism to guarantee that each country can bring its minimum level of services up to the same acceptable period and level. Against that backdrop, we give ourselves these few months. You asked what is different. The revised Treaty of Chaguaramas did not exist 30, 35 years ago, and that revised Treaty of Chaguaramas imposes certain precepts upon us that, unless we carve it out, will be there to make countries liable. During the pandemic, we had to carve out certain things. There were restrictions on movement for public health purposes. That was understood. The treaty provides for restrictions for national security purposes. The treaty provides for restrictions for balance of payments purposes. We have determined that in order to facilitate freedom of movement, we may have to do it in a way where we guarantee a minimum level of rights. And that may relate to primary education, as you heard Prime Minister Skerritt say, pre-primary, primary, secondary education. It may relate to primary health care. It may relate to emergency health care. We are already covered with Social Security rights through the agreement that exists in Caricom. So what we are doing is to ensure that the desire of heads is met by the reality of implementation. And we give ourselves this period of time to be able to make the amendments to the treaty so that countries can do so without fear of any further recriminations. Thank you.
Thank you, PM.
That is why Prime Minister Skerritt said that the heads who founded this entity would be smiling on us, because in a very real sense, this is what ordinary people want. And I want to say something. In a region that is underpopulated, and in a region that is facing the most difficult crises, from climate to recovery from pandemic to debt to all kinds of other problems, if ever there was a time that we need to come together as one, it is now. And Prime Minister Skerritt was correct in saying that this conference reflected a mood of can-do and optimism, but realistic execution will ground us, and that is why we have fashioned it in the way that we have.
If I may be permitted a follow-up, Mr. Robertson, how big and broad do you intend to go beyond the limited category of workers now afforded those, if you like, privileges?
Mr. Gordon, I don't think you're understanding us, you know. Freedom of movement of people. So it's all, A-L-L. There's no services anymore. And that's why you saw heads clap when the Prime Minister announced it, because this now gives full expression to what every Caribbean person has wanted since we've had control of our destiny. Okay? What we want to do, however, is to ensure that when that movement takes place, that it takes place in a way that is orderly, that is effective, that gives true expression to what we want to do, but equally does not expose governments unnecessarily to problems that they would not otherwise have anticipated, okay, because of the treaty as it's currently drafted.
Good evening.
Yes, hold on. Yes?
Good evening.
Young lady, go ahead.
Yes. Good evening, heads of governments. Urvashi Tiwari Rupnarayan from TV6, Trinidad. I'm staying on the topic of free movement to live and work. Of course, Prime Minister Skerritt, in your opening statement, you did mention possibly more reliance on the regional security system and, of course, the implementation agency for crime and security impacts. But, of course, a few months ago, we know that these two agencies came under very much question with one judge describing, with what one judge described as the kidnapping of TNT national Brent Thomas. Caricom citizens are somewhat still in the dark as to what exactly happened, how these two agencies were activated. Some are alleging unauthorized use of these agencies and alleged abuse of power. Did this fumble at all arise during your discussions? And of course, how can citizens be assured that this may not recur? Thank you.
Well, I don't think we can respond to this. You know, impacts and all of the security architecture, you know, we believe that we accept and we know that they're operating within the laws of the countries. And they have served us well. And I think where we have to be very careful that we as politicians, whether we're in government or out of government, that we do not make statements that are not factual. And in order to seek to score political points. You know, we have to be very careful that we don't unnecessarily put into question these institutions that are serving us well, especially where our own security within the region is concerned. So I do not subscribe to what you're saying, and therefore I cannot respond to your specific question with the allegations that have been made where impacts and others are concerned.
Good evening to you, Prime Minister Skerrit. Curtis Matthew from Dominica. My question is on the engagement between the U.S. and Caricom this afternoon. You, Prime Minister Skerrit, said that you all have made some requests to the U.S. The embargo against Cuba, of course, sanctions on Venezuela. Was there any concrete commitment coming from the United States to Caricom, especially as Caricom celebrates its 50th anniversary? Thank you very much.
Well, you know, our position on Cuba is well known. Both our founding fathers and ourselves have been very clear and strident with regards to the call for the removal of the blockade against Cuba. In respect to Venezuela, we have made it clear that we do not believe that there's a justification to have those sanctions on Venezuela. We in the Caribbean, especially those of us who have been signatories and beneficiaries of the Petro-Caribbean Agreement, have suffered immensely. And therefore, our citizens, especially with the high cost or price of petroleum products on the global market. And so we have seen the Petro-Caribbean Agreement virtually come to a halt in some of our countries because of the inability of Venezuela to export the petroleum products to our respective countries. And out of this Petro-Caribbean Agreement, because you have a deferred payment, especially when the price goes beyond $100 on the international market, a lot of these funds will be used by our respective countries for economic and social investments, you know, and job creation. And so we believe that that the issue of sanctions on Venezuela should be removed, and allow the people of Venezuela to go about their lives, especially in these challenging times. You know, we believe that there are other ways of us addressing our concerns, but certainly everyone else in the Caribbean should really be very firm in respect to our calls for the removal of the sanctions on Venezuela.
Did you all, Prime Minister, get any commitment from the U.S. on these matters?
Well, you know, obviously they will note those requests and the submissions. They have raised certain issues of what Venezuela should do or should not do. Venezuela is a sovereign country and so forth. Some of those things I personally don't agree with, but this is obviously the U.S. may have a particular reason why they have those sanctions in place, but from our vantage point, we don't think that there are any justifications for it. And after so many years, we believe that the time has come for those sanctions to be removed.
Thank you. Kijan?
Peter Richards.
Thanks. Kijan Haynes from Garden Media Trinidad. Just tacking on to that question, as we are talking about Venezuela and Cuba, was there any discussion on a more tolerant approach to accepting refugees from those countries? And specifically to Dr. Rowley, any assurances from the U.S. about extending the temporary lifting of the sanctions, the 2-year agreement that we have to help us with our Dragon deal? Thank you.
We didn't get down to that level of specificity, but what you should understand is that we are, at the moment, engaged with the United States in a way that we have not before, and that is the first hurdle that we have to cross, and we make our case, and we continue to make them. We have further meetings with the United States delegation tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, so the conversations continue.
And on refugees?
No, we didn't actually have much of a discussion on refugees. I mean, Trinidad and Tobago in particular, we manage our situation with migrants under our Immigration Act, and we are a sovereign country, and we protect our interests in those matters. I see a lot of people taking it upon themselves to tell us what to do with and how and in our country. The bottom line is that we do have laws, and we are a country governed by laws, and we operate based on the laws that exist at the time.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Our first question online.
Yeah, sorry, just to further point, regards to our engagement with the United States, and I agree with the Prime Minister, there has been a heightened engagement by the United States. Coming from the Summit of the Americas, met with President Biden and Vice President Harris. We've met with Vice President Harris, I believe, last month in the Bahamas. And here today, not only the Secretary of State, but several Congress and persons were here. We engage ourselves in more than 2 hours, a number of items. And I think we are setting a very good platform for engagement with the United States. We have said to the United States that they have been overlooking us for way too long, and they have taken note of this, and we're seeing a practical change in the whole approach towards the Caribbean, and we welcome those engagements.
Thank you, PM. Our first question online, Erica Virtue of the Jamaica Gleaner. Erica, are you still with us?
Yes, I am hearing you. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are hearing you now.
Yes, I'm asking, what more can we be told of the specifics of the arrangement between what Rwanda has offered to the solution in the solution to the situation in Haiti, and what specific decisions did Caricom itself take regarding the ongoing situation there?
Well, Rwanda, since last September, indicated its willingness to provide peacekeeping and security personnel and to help strengthen the National Police of Haiti, the Haitian National Police. There are a number of actions or steps we believe going forward which we need to take, and of course the Prime Minister of Haiti has made it very clear in numerous statements in Jamaica at the conference of engagement of the various stakeholders. He made it very clear here on a number of occasions that he will not seek election in Haiti, and that he is only prepared to lead a government up until the hosting of credible, free and fair elections. Now, we are also advancing the view that there must be a UN security resolution on the matter so that we can get a coalition of nations who are prepared to support the Haitian government, Haitian people, in addressing both the security and humanitarian crisis in Haiti. Now, the issue of financing of this, and we believe that France and Canada and the United States and others, it's a matter we have put to them, and we'll be advancing this from the Caribbean Committee standpoint to have these interventions financed. This is going to take us 1 year to 2 years. There also the issue of broadening the government so that there can be greater consensus among parties. That more stakeholders need to form part of a national government or in place in Haiti so that there can be greater buy-in to the actions that we need to take along with our brothers and sisters in Haiti. We have in place an eminent group of persons, 3 former prime ministers, Prime Minister Dr. Anthony of St. Lucia, Prime Minister Bruce Golden of Jamaica, and Prime Minister Perry Christie of the Bahamas. They've been working diligently in advancing the cause. They'll be going to Haiti next week to meet again with stakeholders. They'll be going to the United States to meet with stakeholders there and to ensure that they can get some kind of consensus. We believe that some of the actions that we are proposing there, based on consultation with the Haitian people, will put into a sharper focus the steps that we need to take so that we can get some resources to Haiti and seek to resolve the challenges confronting our Haitian brothers and sisters. But always noting that this will be and must be a Haitian-led solution. We are here at the back or at the side supporting them, but it must be a Haitian-led solution. And so we're simply here as brothers and sisters helping with advancing the cause to a solution to this crisis confronting our brothers and sisters.
Mr. Chairman, I should probably add also at this stage that Prime Minister Henry would have specifically asked for a derogation from the freedom of movement agreement that we would have made among ourselves, given their circumstances, and we have agreed. So I just put that on the table for the avoidance of doubt. Thank you.
Thank you, PM. There's a second question online before we come back in the room. Jacqueline Charles, Miami Herald.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Prime Minister Skerritt, I just want to be clear on the Haiti issue. And I have one other about arms, by the arms. Are you saying that Caricom has changed its position since February on supporting an international force for Haiti? Because when that issue came up, Caricom opted to focus more on the police and did not take a decision on that. And then second, on the issue of arms with the United States, did you all specifically raise the issue with Secretary Blinken about the U.S. doing more to control its borders? And did he make any promises to that effect?
Yes, well, in regards to our intention there is to strengthen the police, the Haitian police, in order to create a corridor, a safe corridor, to be able to bring in the humanitarian support which Haiti desperately needs at this time. The reality is, as far as we understand it, the Haitians who are going to bed hungry, the Haitians who have no access to food, and therefore we need to create this safe corridor to bring this humanitarian support. At present, if you send, as you may know, Ms. Charles, if you send any quantity of food items to Haiti, it will not get to the beneficiaries. And how do we get this? Strengthening the national police, providing them with the resources, providing them with the advice they require, and create that safe corridor so that we can have the resources coming in. So we ameliorate the security situation, and we allow the environment to be safe enough to bring in the humanitarian support so that we can have peace and tranquility, hopefully, in Haiti, and move to the other political issues of free and fair elections and have a properly elected government for the people of Haiti. So these are some of the things that we're looking at. And all of these things are coming out of the consultation with the Haitian stakeholders. These are not things that we have created within CARICOM. They're all based on what the stakeholders are saying to us, and we're capturing the threads of what they're saying. And this is what we're saying could be the next steps for this. In respect to the United States, as we said, this question of what is the U.S. view on Haiti and how the U.S. sees itself being able to support. As we speak, the U.S. continues to provide support to the Haitian National Police. Secretary Blinken indicated, because we shared with him our views, our thinking, and he indicated to us that what we're proposing is really not far away from their own thinking. So it's a matter for us now and the Security Council, or the Security Council folks to really look at the situation and seek to pass a resolution. There are some countries we need to speak to as CARICOM, and we have taken on ourselves to speak to those countries who are members of the Security Council so that we can have unanimity at the Security Council so that we can give the cover to many countries who would like to participate in providing the support to the Haitian people on the ground.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Peter?
Peter Richards, Caribbean Media Corporation.
One minute. There's another part to that question which hasn't been answered, is whether the United States has accepted that more can be done at their end with respect to the illicit trade in firearms. And the answer is yes. That was a major part of our discussion with the United States and among ourselves. And we're happy to report that we are seeing some specific actions by the United States in that direction.
Peter Richards, Caribbean Media Corporation, Barbados. I think I just heard the Prime Minister of Barbados make reference to the fact that the Haitians have put something on the table. I wasn't clear. Are we saying within the whole context of the CSME, the free movement that we're trying to move towards, would the issue of visas needed by Haitians to visit some Caribbean countries, would that be eliminated? Would that be removed? And secondly, Prime Minister Skerritt, you talked about a retreat in Dominica on August 18th and 19th to discuss, quote, some critical and core issues. Could you expand on what you mean by critical and core issues? Thank you.
If I may, the status quo remains. What we've said is that the Prime Minister of Haiti asked that the arrangements that we put in place for freedom of movement, that Haiti be excused from those arrangements, a derogation. And we have agreed, because Haiti's circumstances obviously different at this point, and it's a very delicate situation. So the status quo will remain for those countries who, in fact, still have visa requirements for Haitians traveling. Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Yes, the number of issues that we have set ourselves a time frame towards action. You have issues of trade barriers, and the president of Guyana, in his presentation on food and nutrition security, highlighted the need for us to address the issue of trade barriers. The other issue of governance within the Caribbean community, the issues within governance, the issues of security, taking stock of the geopolitics of the world and how do we position ourselves going forward. COP28 is coming, that we need to have a clearly defined, cohesive position going to COP28 where every one of us will speak from the same hymn sheet. And then you have issue of climate financing, the need for the reform or transformation of the international financial systems and architecture, so that we can have a better deal for ourselves here within the Caribbean community. So these are some of the issues that we need to look at, and there are some other functional cooperation areas that we need to look at to enhance the cooperation among Caricom countries. Yeah.
I noticed so far tonight we've not spoken on the issue of transportation, and more specifically air transportation, NIAT.
Sure. Well, yes, we discussed a number of issues. We're simply highlighting some of them because of time. But yes, we received a report on air transportation. Caribbean Airlines has been doing a fantastic job thus far in seeking to help fill the void that has been created with the absence of LIAT. And then you have other airlines. You have Bahamas Air that'll be looking at doing some flights within the Caribbean and onto North America as well. And we thank the Prime Minister of Bahamas for this. Inter-Caribbean has increased the number of additional flights. Inter-Caribbean is from Turks and Caicos. I mean, they have really been lifesavers for us, especially during COVID time, and with the absence of LIAT. We mandated the CDB to engage in a study and to examine air transport within the Caribbean community and to come up with some recommendations on how we should go about addressing this issue with the absence of LIAT. The CDB has completed this study. It will be presented to us in the next couple of weeks. They have firm numbers in terms of the cost. They're looking at an 8-year or 7-year program of cost. And I'm hoping that we can get the buy-in of all of us in respect to this entity, which we believe will complement what Carl is doing, will complement what Caribbean Airlines and others are doing. Because there's no doubt, Peter, that we have to address the issue of interregional travel. I mean, it's impossible to get from one island to the other. But the role which LIAT played in interregional travel, we have not been able to fill that void. And therefore, we must come up with an arrangement that will help us fill that void created in the absence of LIAT.
Peter, this is a good point to advise you that the government of Trinidad and Tobago has received and has accepted CAL's new strategic plan. And in that plan, it involves CAL obtaining additional equipment to do more in the region And Cal is also in discussions with the government of Barbados. Maybe the Prime Minister of Barbados might want to mention how the discussions have gone.
Thank you. We actually are about to sign an agreement with Cal if it hasn't been signed by the airport, even as we've spoken. As Prime Minister Skerritt said, this issue is not a simple issue. And the truth is that we have suffered from a significant reduction in seat numbers. We believe that there's enough space for CAL, for Inter-Caribbean, and for any other mechanism that we resolve. And I want to single out also Prime Minister Davis, who has stepped up to the plate even while Bahamas is not a member of the Caricom single market and economy. And they will be testing out the market for us this summer by being able to have connections from North America into the Caribbean. Part of our difficulty has also been the reduction in flights out of North America generally. And if you dig deep into the industry, and you can talk to Cal, you can talk to others, part of the constraint is the absence of capacity of getting planes and pilots. And therefore, you can't just snap your finger and have access to both. And that is why we have to have a cooperative approach to the resolution of the problems rather than believing that any one airline can solve it overnight.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Young lady.
Cleopatra Murphy, Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas. With regards to the free movement of people, Prime Minister Motley would have mentioned the Bahamas not being a part of the Caribbean single market economy. In terms of what it means for the Bahamas, what does this full free movement of people then mean for the Bahamas? What is our current stance on that? Can you explain?
We're not impacted by it, but we'll facilitate travel to the Bahamas. And the same rules and laws will apply as it is now.
I guess so. I want to know, how is it that we're going to facilitate it for other countries?
No, we are not a part of the CSME, and so the arrangements there do not apply to us. We are protocol out of it, but we will be cooperating and collaborating in all other matters related to Caricom issues.
If I can give more context, Bahamas and Montserrat are not parts of the CSME. And therefore, they would not be subject to freedom of movement of skills or freedom of movement of people. So you have the two of them out, and you have Haiti that is specifically asked to be left out. There may be one or two other countries that may have peculiar circumstances that may want to say so. But for the most part, we have agreed as an integration community that we need now to be able to fuel the aspirations of our people while shouldering the responsibilities that are necessary to propel growth. We need people for growth. And if we don't have people, we're not going to get the growth.
Thank you, Prime Minister. There will be two more questions, one online and one in the House. The gentleman behind Peter.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Dylan Deschamps from Loop Caribbean News. I just wanted some clarification. Does the decision on free movement include the single economic space that Prime Minister Skerritt had asked for? And also, regarding free movement, it's no secret that we have a lot of xenophobia in the Caribbean regarding people from the poorer countries. So what are the government's plans to address the fears of the people on the ground? And my third question, you mentioned that you will be welcoming Curacao and Martinique to CARICOM next year. Are any discussions taking place to welcome the Dominican Republic and Cuba, possibly as associate states or even full members?
Yeah, the issue of the single domestic space with regards to the decision for the free movement of people, that now subsumes the single space. Okay, so it's moving in the right direction. The issue of Curacao and Martinique, they're both coming in as associate members. We believe there was no formal discussions in respect to Dominican Republic and Cuba, but we believe that in time to come, they may very well become members of Caricom. But there were no formal, there wasn't any formal discussion on it. Some years ago, we had, maybe about 10 years ago, we had engagements with discussions with the Dominican Republic on Dominican Republic joining the Caricom. But for one reason or the other, those discussions were suspended. But we believe that at some point in time, we will have to engage in those discussions again. And that's the reality of the world, that's the reality of the exposure which Caricom has, how people view Caricom. And if you look at it, the number of countries that are accredited to Caricom, you know, if you compare this list now to 10 years ago, it's a significant difference. So there's a growing interest within the global space, within the Caribbean, on Caricom and the desire of many to be part of the Caricom experience.
Thank you. Final question, David Papano of the Sabrek News.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My question is based on Caricom's 2025 target. Has Caricom taken any decision in implementing a fast ferry service? And also, can they say if the deadline will be met for the 2025 reduction of food imports? And what products has there been progress on, and which countries are on track?
I think, first of all, thank you very much for the question. I think we have addressed the first part of the question in terms of transportation. The transportation plan is not only air, but sea, and that is exactly why we need a retreat. We have a number of studies that are completed. We have a number of documents that need to be read and analyzed so that we can move to decision-making. And that is why Prime Minister Skerritt pointed to the fact that we need some concentrated work at the retreat so that we can come up with some strong positions and decisions as to where we're going. In terms of the food production, as Prime Minister said, I believe that we have to be real. The circumstances around us is changing every single day. There are some structural problems, some institutional problems that we are resolving. Take, for example, the issue of poultry. From 2020 to now, there are three key inputs in terms of feed production: rice, corn, and soya. You had a 100% increase in the cost of rice as an input, and between 65 and 55% in the cost of corn and soya. We, as a region, our total forward planning capacity in terms of storage for corn, rice, and soya, we can only store 20% of what we require. So when there is a glut on the market and the prices are low, we cannot make use of that because there is no storage capacity. So we are now pointing these facts out to the private sector so they can now see the viability of investing in the storage facility. And we have a number of countries who are now partnering in relation to this. So it's a issue that is evolving. Whether we are on track, based on our original targets, we are doing well, and I believe that we have now the real possibility of meeting those targets. Yesterday in Trinidad and Tobago, they have distributed, I think, 75 tons of paddy, and they're going back into rice production. 3,000 acres. Seed paddy. They're going back into the production of rice. 3,000 acres of rice. Barbados, going now into the production of prawns, setting up the food terminal, putting up the sanitary guidelines. So St. Lucia, diversifying their agriculture portfolio. In every single country, we have seen more investment, more interest, more dynamism, and
this is going in the right direction. We're also looking to use technology, looking at hydroponics, looking at aquaculture, high-yielding crops. So it is a very, very integrated and holistic plan that seeks to justify the rate of return, that seeks to rebuild interest. We're also focusing on research and development, the removal of the barriers. So it's a very complex plan that I think, to do justice to what we're doing in many of these areas. I've heard Prime Minister Skerritt, we need to have maybe a session with the media, a whole day session in the media as to where we are going and how we are going and what we're doing to get where we want to be. I believe that we have set ourselves some self-imposed targets, some self-imposed barriers within ourselves to get these things done, and you must appreciate that. I'm very, very confident that at 50, we are on the right track and in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. President. Lee?
Can I just follow up, please? Thank you very much, Mr. President. But could you or Prime Minister Motley give an update on where is the progress on the Barbados-Guyana food terminal?
We actually have the private sector working with us, and ironically, it's also a Trinidadian enterprise, so it's really a misnomer to just say Barbados-Guyana, because it is Barbados-Guyana, Trinidad, in terms of the structure of the investment, the source of produce, and the agro-processing that will take place. We've identified the lands in Lairs in St. Michael in Barbados. The designs for the buildings are completed, and I would expect that they should be going in to the planning department, and the appropriate studies for environmental impact assessment, etc., are going to be undertaken very shortly to be able to facilitate the planning considerations.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, we could stay here whole night, but unfortunately this has come to an end, and I want to thank the heads of government and the Secretary General for being available for your questions. Thank you and good night.
Today, we at the Massey Group are filled with pride and admiration as we celebrate Caricom's 50th anniversary. It is an honor to salute this remarkable milestone and reflect on the profound impact that regional integration movement has had on our Caribbean community. Caricom, founded on the principles of unity, collaboration, and progress, has been instrumental in fostering cooperation among our nations. It has provided a platform for dialogue, exchange, and joint initiatives that have shaped the destiny of our region. As we commemorate Caricom's 50th anniversary, we pay tribute to the visionaries and the leaders who championed this cause, paving the way for the Caribbean's growth and development. At the Massey Group, we recognize that our success is intrinsically linked to the vibrancy and resilience of the Caribbean community.
All right, so here we are then. This has been quite a session. You know, Marlene, I have attended several Caricom heads of government meetings, right? The mood exuding from these leaders is clearly very, very different from my past experience. Under normal, not normal, but under regular circumstances, we've always had 3 people come to the podium. Today, we nearly had all of them.
Nearly had all of them, yeah.
At the podium, which is a reflection of their, maybe the recognition of the requirement to communicate to the people exactly what this meeting was all about, and to set out clear timetables as far as implementation was concerned.
Yeah. Yes, because you heard some very specific dates mentioned for different agenda items moving forward. But you're right, Julian, the conversation, it's almost as if they were listening to us and taking a cue from us in
We
studio.
could have written a lot of these things, right?
We could have written the communique, because there is an emphasis on the people and bringing the work of the heads of government and the Caricom to the people and closer to the people, and recognizing that there appears to be some bit of a disconnect, and you want to close those gaps. So all of the conversations that resonated, that came out of the conversation, from all of the speakers, is about people, free movement of people. So it's no longer about looking at skills. We're not having that conversation. We want to get our people closer together and moving, and we want to identify whatever barriers might exist and reduce those or remove those barriers, and setting some fairly aggressive timelines for those barriers. I mean, only time will tell whether or not we realize those lofty objectives, but there certainly has been, as you correctly noted, a sense of, we know that there have been some challenges, and we know we have to do things differently, and we are committing to our citizens that we're going to do things differently.
This is a sense of urgency.
Yes, yes, yeah.
And I'm really struck by that. At the same time, they've also shared with us the complexities that remain.
Yes.
And therefore, don't set your expectations too high.
Manage your expectations.
But manage your expectations.
Manage your expectations.
And recognize that we are working assiduously.
And we recognize that we need to work to bring some successes to the Caricom region. Some successes that the metric for that will be how our people feel and how involved our people are in taking this movement forward. And I think somewhere inside of there was an implicit acknowledgement that Caricom has not touched the average citizen, that the people really have been disconnected from it. That's what I took from it, that there was some implicit acknowledgement that we need to bring this closer to the people. It is for the people, and we have to do something about closing those gaps so that our citizens feel as if they are in fact involved.
Now, we both agree that we had a hand in writing this communique, right? So I thought we'd spend a little time just walking through some of the things. The audio wasn't great at the top, so I think a lot of people missed some of the deliberation or the update provided by the chairman, Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit. First, it was Haiti.
Yeah. Conversation around Haiti, just as we had anticipated, just as was signaled from the start of the meeting on Monday, that Haiti would in fact take center stage. But, again, a very cautious approach to dealing with Haiti. The chair, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, signaling that Haiti has in fact been the talking point, a significant part of the talking point with the U.S. representatives, including Secretary of State Blinken. But of course, wanting to acknowledge and respect Haiti's sovereignty to manage their affairs, but making it abundantly clear that the region stands ready to provide training for the Haitian police. And really and truly, I think the word that was used by one of the prime ministers is really treating this as a humanitarian concern. So there are persons who don't have access to food, and you want people to be able to have access to some of the basic needs that they have to survive in the country. But providing support, but in a way that respects Haiti's sovereignty to manage their own affairs, but recognizing that they are in fact challenged, and making it abundantly clear that the region and the CARICOM counterparts are ready, willing, and able to provide support once the signal comes from the Haitian government. But we're not going to run in there and try to take things over and to manage things in the way that we think best, but know that we're here by your side, we're your allies, and we will provide the support. Once you call, once you signal, we're there. And
we had confirmation of the position taken by the current Prime Minister of Haiti, Ariel Henry, that he would not run.
Yes.
Which is a signal. I did hear about this before, because in a sense he made that commitment at the meeting with the eminent persons in Kingston, Jamaica some weeks ago. His assuming the responsibility as Prime Minister obviously was not readily welcomed in Haiti, so he's had a problem. and the parliamentary system is literally gutted over time. And therefore, the environment to work towards free and fair elections in Haiti, as we know, has been fraught with considerable difficulties.
Yeah. Yes. So, I mean, it is a work in progress, but I think one thing that provides some measure of comfort to me, don't know if the persons in, the Haitian citizens will see it as some measure of comfort, but there is a sense of urgency. There is a sense that the platform is burning and there needs to be some intervention in very short order. I think that was one of the key messages coming out of the heads of government meeting, that they recognize that this is a burning platform that can have impacts, and all of the conversations around the humanitarian crisis, the natural hazards that can impact on Haiti, all of those things coming into the mix. So there is that recognition.
Right next door, Cuba.
Yes. Interesting conversation. Yes. I don't know where you want to start on that. Prime Minister Skerrit announcing that they raised with the U.S. government the question of the embargo against Cuba, but of course, one of the journalists raising the question, has there been any conversation or consideration to having Cuba and also the Dominican Republic as members of Caricom? And of course, the diplomatic response, that conversation has not been raised, presumably by the Cuban counterparts. But there is a recognition, again, reinforcing Caricom's support of Cuba as one of our neighbors, unwavering support, if I can add that word, unwavering support of Cuba, and recognizing the impact of the embargo. And if I can stick into that conversation, of course, the sanctions against Venezuela, and one of the prime ministers raising the issue of how those sanctions are in fact impacting on Petrocaribe and, of course, those Caricom countries that are members of that would formerly have benefited from the Petrocaribe arrangement, and the fact that they're now facing high energy prices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of diplomatic conversations and nuances coming out from the meeting, and there are those persons, our fellow citizens across the region who would have studied some of these issues over the years and know that there are, there's more than what the average person will see that would have led to some of those conversations than simply the pestle. Absolutely, yes. Good news in terms of Martinique and Curacao as associate members. We were updated that there have been conversations around Martinique and Curacao as associate members. We were told that there's some negotiations, of course, T's to be crossed and I's to be dotted, but certainly hoping to have some clear word on their ascension, for want of a better word, as associate members of Caricom, some word by the end of August, and of course for that to be ratified by September. So before the end of the year, there are likely to be some new associate members to Caricom.
And a formal ceremony in Georgetown.
And a formal ceremony in Georgetown to welcome these new associate members. So things are happening.
I'm telling you that the Martinique delegation must be having champagne at this moment. I'll tell you why. They have been trying to get into the community in one form or fashion for about 20 years. 24 years, I think, when I talked to one of the ambassadors. And from my own experience of working in the environment of Martinique and Guadeloupe, particularly Guadeloupe, they have always really much desired that they have a functional cooperation
arrangement
with the English-speaking Caribbean. They see the value of it, and I know that their approaches have been kind of, hold on here, because we don't want France to jump into our lake and create some ripples that we can't deal with. But the timing, I think, is interesting, because I'm aware that France has now become a member of the CDB, the Caribbean Development Bank, and providing, the kind of funding support, and that there's a new position taken by the French government to kind of free up Martinique and Guadeloupe to be partners within such a grouping, and that, I think, is really the change in the situation.
And then think about the tourism possibilities, because I'm now kind of extending it. So tourists coming from France to Martinique, and then being able, once we can, of course, organize air or sea
the
transportation,
connection.
you know, the connections, then that kind of tourism flowing into some of the other Caricom destinations, you know, that are in the vicinity. So, so there are these opportunities.
And there's another option as well, because it is possible to go to Europe.
Yes.
Through the French
Absolutely, yes.
One hop
That's
to Paris.
Right, yes.
And you can go on a train or whatever,
That's correct,
whatever
yeah.
to London, wherever you want to go.
That's right, yeah.
So those are the things that we need.
The Euro Channel, yes.
The Euro Channel.
Yes.
Wow.
So lots coming out of it.
South Korea.
South Korea remaining, as Prime Minister Skerrit described, a long-standing partner of the Caribbean, looking to provide support in terms of agriculture, but also to increase its contribution. If I heard him correctly, we were having some technical difficulties in terms of the feed, but looking to increase their contribution, presumably financial contribution, to the region. Yeah. So again, that is, you know,
and I suspect that is going to go through the CDB.
I suspect it will probably go to the Caribbean Development Bank. Of course, not surprisingly, COP28, climate change, climate financing, the Bridgetown Initiative, all of those conversations coming out when the heads would have met with the president of the UAE. So yes, and of course, Prime Minister Skerrit making the point that the community, our Caricom leaders, were pressing that they would wish to see some concrete actions coming out of COP28. Well, we'll wait to see what happens there, because it's not up to the host country to determine what concrete actions come out of those conversations, but certainly signaling, the Caricom community signaling that they would want to see some more assertive action coming out of COP28. Yeah, we wait and see how that pans out.
Yeah, one of the other things I think as well in terms of the chairman's report is the participation of various governments.
Yes.
You know, the UK government is
That's
described
right, yes.
as a strong partner.
Rwanda.
And China, etc. So that I think is very interesting. Cricket, I was surprised that they didn't, you know, that the room didn't just erupt in one way or another. But
there was some laughter. There was some laughter.
But in essence, I saw the president of Cricket West Indies today, Mr. Shallow, and obviously he's had an opportunity to present at the meeting so as Skerrit, the Prime Minister says, you know, we expect that we'll be able to bowl England out for 46.
And
again.
Prime Minister Keith Rowley being appointed chairman of a subcommittee on cricket.
Yeah. So that is going to be I want to be a fly on the wall for sure when that's happening.
But really the issue is to find out, from what I gathered from what Chair Skerrit was saying, you know, to find out what really are the challenges and to see if we can address those challenges meaningfully to return West Indies cricket to the glory days. I remember being in England back in the day and going into Euston Station, and there is a larger-than-life poster of was it Joel Garner or Courtney Walsh or and one of them, and it was saying, you know, fee, fi, fo fum. I smelled the blood of some Englishmen, essentially signaling that the West Indies team was coming to England to annihilate England in World Cups, in cricket, sorry. So I think we long for those glory days. I myself have now kind of shifted to the shorter version of the game in terms of the Caribbean Premier League, but I know that's a long-standing conversation with some other people who don't quite see CPL as...
You don't see cricket.
No, don't see CPL as... No, they don't.
But, you know, well, I'm not surprised that Prime Minister Rowley got the position of chair, despite his very strident comments with me last week, etc. I mean, his heart, like all of us, is in the future of West Indies cricket. We have rally round still.
And not just that, you kind of have to manage the tabanka. You can't be taking tabanka after tabanka after tabanka. So that is not a good thing. That is not good for the heart. So I think we need to try and deal with some ways in which we can move the West Indies cricket off of life support and into something that is a little more meaningful.
All right, food security really, I mean, coming right there at the end, President Irfan Ali really gave I would say, would you say a rousing kind of update?
Yes, I think it was an energized update coming from President Ali. You know, the 25 by 25, we called it earlier on in our chat earlier on. And he's saying that, you know, that he's seeing more dynamism in terms of the conversations. He's pointing to technology, and the technology in terms of things like hydroponics, not simply to improve the productivity in terms of the sector, but also as a way to mitigate against the impact of climate change. One of the challenges that we always face in the region is that because we have these land-intensive agricultural practices, 2 drop of rain, as we say in Trinidad, and your entire crops are washed away. So I was happy to hear President Ali talk about, you know, the technology and moving to hydroponics, essentially more weather-resistant types of agriculture. But he pointed to something that I think is important, and we again touched on the need for there to be private sector kind of injections into taking the region forward. And President Ali was talking about the fact that even when some prices are low in terms of greens, and he mentioned grains, he mentioned rice, corn, and soya. When prices are low, the region, we only have 20% storage capacity, so we cannot capitalize on those low prices, and essentially making the call or sharing that the private sector, there is an opportunity for the private sector to come in and invest in expanded storage facilities so that we can capitalize on those lower prices and pass them on to the regional population.
And I will give him a high mark for his statement about having a session with the media.
Yes.
Because he must realize from the question that was posed that they need to tell this story.
Yes.
Because they pointed to successes and progress as far as this matter is concerned.
Absolutely. I mean, the media has always been and will always be important connectors to the people. You have so many social media platforms now. There are all of these opportunities to communicate to people differently. I mean, it's not like long time where you had to wait on the broadsheet to be printed. I mean, people are getting information in real time now. So it's important to engage the media so that the media understands the direction in which the region is going.
Yeah. I mean, they spent a lot of time on the freedom of movement. I think that's quite clear in people's minds now.
Absolutely.
And the other last thing would be the matter of transportation. Spelling out what the challenges are there, but they're going to get together and have a look. Again, one of the critical things on the agenda.
And of course, Prime Minister Skerrit hosting his Caricom colleagues to a retreat in Dominica on August 18th and 19th. And when he was pressed on some of the issues to be discussed, he shared looking at climate financing and how the international financial architecture is going to be reformed to deal with issues such as climate financing, trade barriers, something that we need to look at in the region in terms of how we deal with food and agriculture, as it were, governance issues, of course, issues of security, the influx of arms, and essentially, and I thought that this was critical, how the region is going to advance a collective position given what is happening in the geopolitical landscape. So a lot of things to be discussed in August in Dominica.
We're going? Dominica, here we come.
Here we come. Free movement.
Free movement.
Here we come.
So this is the point at which we give a very big thank you to everybody. We're very happy that we're able to present these sessions to you. I want to thank all the people that I called and asked to participate in this session. Marlene Natz, of course, Ardeen Serju, Natalie Legore,
Joanne Tull, Dr. Justin Ram, Perez Turner Jones,
and Sandra Mirage, who's been our big producer for this entire series. And I have to thank the people at Guardian Media as well, who when I called and said, hey, I need a studio, quick time, they came back and said, yes, you can. But I think my greatest thanks will have to go to the Massey Group, who on looking at the plan said, yes, Julian, we'll back you. We'll give you some money and you can find the rest. Those were the terms. I wouldn't tell you the detail. But I think it's important to understand what is behind this whole thrust and why I've decided that I would set up something called Caribbean Bridges. Because I think the communication that we've experienced over the last days is just a starting point. not just for us, but for all media systems across the Caribbean, and also for the key players who must communicate the things that they're doing in the interests of Caribbean people. So I want to thank all the people who have contributed in one way or another, and I particularly want to thank the people who are listening to these broadcasts on Freedom 106.5. They're a new station, but I think they're on the right track in terms of communicating critical issues to the audience here in Trinidad and Tobago, and by extension to the diaspora community.
And if I can make a plug, I'm on tomorrow morning, actually sharing some insights in terms of the recap of the third day of the Caricom Heads of Government meeting.
Excellent.
Freedom 106.5.
Right. So there we are then. So to everybody, I want to say a special thank you, but the last thank you is to the crew. The team behind the scenes, you don't see them on camera, but they are determined to ensure that we do things right. So give a hand to the Guardian Media team, right? Making it all. So let's roll the credits, but let me also put in a plug, a thank you to Stephen Dubal and his team, and to the website people as well, Ryan C. Mungle, and also to Dominic, Andrew. They have worked over a very short period of time to pull this all together. And I know you're saying he got more thanks to give, but the final thank you will have to go to the Caricom Secretariat in Georgetown for coming on board and showing us the way. And I can thank former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson as well for giving me the time to talk to me. I also thank, of course, Byron Blake, who was considered the godfather of the Caribbean community. And I was told yesterday he was the second employee at Caricom.
Ooh, okay.
So he's got a special place.
Talk about institutional memory.
And institutional memory. Boy, did I draw on that. So my thanks to everybody. I think I'm done now with the thank yous. I had to put this in writing somewhere. And of course, I have to thank one man who gave me 90 minutes of his time, who's a busy man, as you know, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley. Thank you, sir, and we salute you and we hope you succeed in fixing West Indies cricket.
To minimize heart attacks around the region.
To minimize heart attacks around the region and the diaspora community. So that's it for thank yous. Let's roll the credits and say thank you, and keep tracking on CaribbeanBridges.com.